Hey everybody, what's going on? Dace here, and today we are taking a look at my Deathsmiles clear just from this morning. I finally got this game after probably a year or a little more of waiting for the physical version that I had pre-ordered, and I didn't jump into it right away because of course I had other things on the go, but just yesterday I felt inspired to finally get into this and just kind of treat it as a casual thing to go along with my rolling gunner stuff and other things that I have on the go. So I'm not going to focus too much on the what we're seeing in the stages. Maybe a little later. I'm going to more or less talk about just my thoughts about the game and whatnot. So yeah, I think to start off, I will say that right from the get-go, there really isn't much I knew about the game going into this. I had never really checked it out at all, with other people's videos. I've seen some clears that friends have done, and of course, Let's Blocking, and some other people. But it's not like I really knew how the game worked, and sometimes that just isn't the case until you play it yourself. But what I noticed was that, there were, I did the the tutorial, before you start the run, you can choose to have that on just so that you get a feel for how things work. And I didn't feel that really covered certain things that other people had mentioned are actually a part of this game. For instance, I recall something about certain shot types corresponding with specific enemies for optimizing your score items or your total that you're generating at the bottom corner. Maybe it somehow boosts that faster. I'm not sure, but I didn't see anything about that whatsoever. It was more or less okay, here are the buttons you press to do certain attacks. But the thing is, I didn't find really any draw to learn that kind of stuff. I'm not it's one thing in Rolling Gunner, you're either using your one-shot type for tiny enemies or your focus shot for larger enemies. It's very, very straightforward in that sense. But in games like this, if that's how it works, or things like Pawarumi, for instance, where you have 3 shot types, and then you have 3 different effects that you can go with. So it's okay, you can use red on blue enemies, or green enemies, or red enemies, and each of those will have a different effect. And then, of course, you switch to green, and then it's okay, green on red, blue, green. It's just it's in ways it's too much to even for me to even care about, because it's well, I don't need that to play the game, to beat the game. If you are in a pinch, sure, you can heal up and score more or deal more damage. So I get that kind of stuff exists, and sure, you can use that to your advantage. But at the same time, it's in ways it just feels too much. And in this game, Deathsmiles, I found myself not really having any interest in learning that. Maybe down the road, if I feel getting really into the game, then of course that might be more important. But what I noticed right away was that the game was very easy. And of course that's gonna that's subjective, because I know what kind of experience I have, and someone jumping into this for the first time, if they have never played shmups or whatever, they may find this to be just super chaotic and confusing and challenging and everything, and I totally understand that. But I think in terms of cave games, this one feels very, very simple. And so here's how it went. I jumped in and I just kept everything on rank 1. And I think on that first run, I made it all the way to the absolute final boss, the big demon thing that comes out, and I had it down to about half the health. I hadn't been using my hyper mode, or whatever you call it, not once the whole thing. And so I think that's part of why I didn't clear it then, because I was taking silly hits to all sorts of craziness, and of course I hadn't gotten any extra lives. So I thought, okay, there's no way they intend for more experienced players to be playing on rank 1, because it's way too easy. And so I decided, you know what, I'm just going to jump into rank 3 for all the stages, because you can choose one rank 1, 2, or 3. for all the stages. And what I noticed was that felt way, way more engaging to me. It's like, okay, here's the action that like I feel is more fitting for like what I'm after. And that was awesome. But what I noticed was like the moment you get to the castle stage, it's just like this insane amount, like out of nowhere, this insane amount of suicide bullets are all of a sudden like a part of the experience, where you haven't really had anything like that the whole game. And I found that like, unless maybe I'm supposed to be making better use of my weapon types or something, like it was very difficult to kind of just like weave around everything. And I don't think I was using the focus shot at all, because like I was just using this one type of weapon. So I fiddled with that for a bit, and would occasionally, like here and there, I would keep getting to stage 5, but it was just like I would have so few resources available and stuff like that. And maybe it's because like I hadn't put any learning whatsoever into this game. It was just like the first night. And so in ways I kind of just thought like, okay, well, let's see what happens if I just go like rank 2, because on the title screen or whatever, it says that rank 2 is like normal. So I thought, okay, if I do all rank 2, that's considered a normal clear, or at least that's my thinking. I'm not exactly sure, because when you have so many ways to kind of customize the flow of the difficulty as you go, like each stage, that's kind of strange to me. And so it's like, okay, well, what is what when you have so much freedom to choose like rank every step of the way? Like maybe I'm just missing something, but what I notice is that unless somehow I wasn't paying attention to something, but I swear, like every time I would choose stage or rank 2 for all the stages, it would be the same thing where I get to the castle and it would just be like this crazy mess of suicide bullets, like filling the screen all over the place. And then out of nowhere this morning, I did the same thing, like just all rank 2, because I was like, okay, I'm gonna like clear it this morning. Like I'm just gonna buckle down, see how runs go. And I know we're close. We just need to like clean up a little bit earlier on. And for whatever reason, when I got to, like I did 2 runs this morning, and when I got to stage 5 in both runs, there were no suicide bullets. And this was very perplexing to me, because like yesterday was a completely different situation. So I'm really curious as to what is going on, or what they want you to do in this game. Or yeah, like it's just, there are a lot of unanswered, or there are a lot of questions. They're probably answered somewhere, but I haven't looked into that right now. So yeah, that was pretty strange. Yeah, so I think there were some other things that I was like, yeah, I've just kind of been rambling, so I just want to take a second to gather my thoughts now. Oh yeah, another thing that I kind of noticed that I'm not so crazy about, like all in all, I love the look of this game. It controls well, it's fun to play. Like I think it's awesome in that sense. Like it's really cool ripping through this experience. But in ways I just feel like there's a little too much stuff that just doesn't need to be there. Like for instance, I have no idea how I got a life up there when usually it's like an extra bomb. And most of the time I don't want an extra bomb. I would just rather have life, when like especially when I was doing a whole bunch of rank 3 runs yesterday, like all the stages on rank 3. But like, yeah, sometimes it's one thing, sometimes it's another thing. And so that has had me thinking like, okay, well, is there like a specific order like I'm supposed to be doing here? And I think in ways stuff like that is not, like it's fine here and there once in a while, but at the same time, it's like, that's not really what I want to need to focus on when I play a game, unless of course I'm really into the game. But like I said, like this for me was not, like I was just more or less checking it out and just getting a feel for it for the first time. So it's not like I'm like, oh man, I love Deathsmiles. I'm jumping in full force. I'm going to like do awesome things in this game. That wasn't the intention. That's not what I want to do right now. So I think it was just a bunch of things that kind of just had this feeling like such a mixed bag that didn't feel like the most balanced experience or the most natural or understandable. I think there's a lot going on here, and I think like it will certainly just take actually learning things. And we'll see like at the end, like when I cleared this run, the final boss, like most of the time I'm just like bombing when I don't even necessarily need to, because it was like, okay, well, I made it here. There's really no sense in just dying and then needing to replay when I can just use my resources. So in that sense, like there really is no learning. Like I had very little idea what the bosses were going to do during certain phases and that kind of stuff. So in ways it's a very sloppy, overly cautious playing in terms of like resource use. But yeah, like, and I don't want to give off the impression that like I don't like the game, because I think it's amazing in its own way. Like I'm having a, like when I was playing here, it's like I'm having a blast. Like it has fairly light memorization, which is nice. You kind of just learn where enemies are and how to prioritize them and how long it takes to kill them and all that kind of stuff. And oh, silly hits. And just little other things, like just luring those things to the bottom corner or sometimes the top corner or whatever. So like in that sense, like it's cool starting to piece some things together in this game, but it kind of just leaves me feeling mixed about the whole experience. But anyway, that's another stage down. As for the story, I didn't follow it whatsoever. That's not really anything I was concerned with. I think one of my favorite, or two of my favorite stages are this one, just because you can do some really awesome things with just boosting your score like crazy, just by staying in front of those areas where like the boulders are coming out, especially when you're in your hyper mode like I am now. So that's really cool, because you can very quickly get like one of the score-based extends, even if you're not hitting like the actual like item on screen extend that sometimes comes out of the car and sometimes doesn't. And other things too, like sometimes enemies would drop like health, like a very specific enemy would drop like a health recharge, and then other times it doesn't do anything, and it's like, well, okay, like what's going on here? Like, yeah, like if it requires a specific order, which in ways it probably does, but at the same time, that's like another thing that I'm not so crazy about, when it's like, okay, you have to play the levels in a specific way just to get certain items. Like, I don't feel that that's really necessary or the most engaging or the most fun for me. But like I said, like it depends on the game too. Like I'm kind of just like sharing everything that is my initial experience, because I have very little experience with this game. It was just yesterday for like, yeah, maybe a few hours over the course of the day, and then just an hour this morning. So obviously there's a lot missing from my awareness, and some, maybe with some answers or whatever, like that might change. But yeah, this is one of my favorite stages, but I think in terms of the visuals and the flow itself, the forest stage is probably my favorite. It just looks awesome. The enemies are really cool, fun to take out. Like, it's just a blast. It's an absolute blast. And the boss fights are definitely interesting. I was not impressed with that. Like normally I just go through this whole attack phase for like without any issue. And then I took a hit, like I was like, what are you, like, are you kidding me? Like what? But like really cool attacks. Like that's so awesome. And of course, if you're on rank 3, there are additional phases for each boss, which adds to the challenge. I sampled so after this stage, there are technically 2 stages. You don't have to do 2. There's like a gorge level, which is optional. and then you can just go like straight to the final stage if you want to, which is what I do in this run. But I did jump into the gorge stage, I think last night, and I'm pretty sure it was on rank 3, and it was just wild. It was just crazy. Suicide bullets like mad, and very, very tight space for you to like work in, because you're going up this like you're going up between like 2 cliffs, and there are like little corners and things you need to work your way around, while enemies are just everywhere, and the suicide bullets are just filling the screen, clouding their way towards you. It's just bonkers. And I think that stuff would actually be really fun when I'm a little more knowledgeable of what you are kind of supposed to be doing in this game, or like the most optimal way to play. But in terms of just jumping in and getting like a first clear, that stage wasn't really anything I felt compelled to tackle. Really, really cool enemies and attacks and stuff. There are some awesome parts. I love those guys. Just the color of the weapon as they're like flinging it back and forth or whatever, waving it. But yeah, there's a lot to pay attention to at times. This is a pretty lengthy level. It's a blast, but there are some times where it gets really wild, or like there's just so much happening that you just take a silly hit for what feels like no reason. It's just like, oh, okay, had I just known that was gonna just be there, I would not have done that. But I'm very curious to see what number 2 plays like. Man, this stage throws a lot at you. But all in all, it is, at the same time, like even with everything I've mentioned, like I do feel it is on the fairly easy side, because I think some cave games, like maybe it's just like the experience I have now, or like others who would play this now after like, let's say a year or 2 or whatever of other games. Like I remember when I played Mushihime-sama and did my original clear, like after Novice, like that took some serious time. Like I'm not sure how long anymore, but it could have easily been like 20, 30, 40 hours or something like that, just to like really learn that game, just to get that first clear. But if rank 2 is normal, and just keeping rank 2 all across the board for the whole run makes it like the equivalent of like a normal mode, then this was extraordinarily easy by comparison to Mushihime-sama and many other cave games. And that's where I feel like there's got to be more to it. I think if I'm going to do another clear soon in this game, it's probably going to be all rank 3 stuff. And then learning the routing for like all the suicide bullet craziness in the later stages. That will just definitely be something. I think that's like where most of the effort will need to go into. But it's just, it's just really strange. Like in ways, that's why I feel like it could be balanced a little better, because to have a game where the first handful of stages all feel like a breeze, even on like rank 3, and then to jump into the last 2 and it just to be this completely different experience, like it just doesn't feel like it fits, or it wasn't handled in the best way. But again, that might just be because I'm missing something, or not. I haven't put actual time into this game yet, like the time it clearly deserves. Because I could probably get really into this and just love the action that much more. Because like when I think about it, like all these slow motion sections where bombs are going off and like there's just tons of stuff happening, and like it's a blast. But yeah, anyway, that's kind of like that whole ramble. I suppose we can focus on the stage itself. I do really like the just the variety of enemies and just the different sections we go through. Sometimes this... yeah, sometimes it's easy to take hits with all these dancing people, or whatever they're supposed to be. Because you'll have lines of people coming down from like the top middle section, and then lines coming up. Another thing that I will say that I kind of felt off about, slightly anyway, is that I'm not sure what to call it, so I'm just going to continue calling it the hyper mode. But that, I feel like that could have just been like, actually maybe, yeah, since I'm not sure for like certain, I'm kind of just going to assume that it would actually fill up way faster if you were constantly switching to whatever attack you're supposed to be using for specific enemies. But when you're not doing that, it's like, okay, you maybe fill up like your first time all the way up to the maximum 1,000, like partway through the second stage. And so in ways, like if you're not, like, yeah, I think in some ways it's like you kind of have to play a certain way if you want to be able to enjoy it the most. Otherwise, it's like, okay, well, you have this hyper mode, but you don't even get to use it too many times in the game. Or at least it feels that way. Like it's just very limited unless you're playing with all these things that you may or may not care about. Now, I do recall Let's Blocking mentioning something about how, like, if you don't use bombs in this fight, then you will get some sort of item, or 2 items or something like that. I didn't really want to risk taking another hit or whatever, so I just said, you know what, I'm just going to bomb. I don't care if I need to play better after the fact or whatever, but... Oh, I wasn't even looking at that. I think I was focusing on something else at the time. But yeah, crazy. And here's another thing too, like just the extent of like how little I know about the game. Like I'm not even sure if the hands would hit me. So there were plenty of times where like I will stay in a completely wide open space. Whereas you might actually be able to cross over certain sprites or certain sections of the boss's sprite. And I wasn't sure like what to do with these boxes. Like maybe I have to push them all the way back or something. This is me like just being here for I think the second time, but obviously the first time was on a very easy mode or rank. I mean, so I just said, you know what, we're just gonna bomb through these boxes because whatever. And then I just realized those were suddenly around me, those purple shots. And at this point, I have no idea what's happening. Or what it's going to do, because I hadn't seen this attack before. So I was like, oh my god, like, oh, and then just like him moving and taking a hit, like, you gotta be joking. Not taking chances. And I think I use another bomb, like, when I clearly don't even need to. Probably that one. I probably could have just stayed where I was. But it is an epic, like, final boss. Like, seeing stuff like this, it's just like, man, if and when I do really click with the game, this is going to be intense stuff to go through on a higher rank, that's for sure. Or, like, the other versions, because, like, the game comes with all sorts of different, variations to play. But yeah, that's the final boss, so... Yeah, anyway, I'm very curious to hear what everyone else thinks. I would imagine it, like, chances are if you know the game, you probably know way more than I do about this game. If you've played it, you probably certainly have a better handle on it. If you've played it for quite a while and have looked into how it works and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, all in all, it's like, it's really cool, but I feel like I just need to get a lot more information and just kind of get a better feel for, yeah, what to do. But that's the clear either way, like what I'm gonna assume is a normal mode clear. And maybe rank 3 is just hard or something. I'm not sure how they would label that. But anyway, we don't need to sit through all of this, because I think it goes on for like a few more minutes, so for those who do want to watch the visuals, that's fine. But yeah, really appreciate everybody who stopped by to check this out and listen. As for this question here, I have no idea like what relevance this has. If it, there was a thought like, oh well, is there like a second loop or something, or like is that just more for like little cutscenes or something at the end? Which I think that's probably the case. But yeah, anyway, thanks again. I trust you enjoyed this episode and the run. Yeah, let me know what you think, and have a stellar day. I really appreciate you all. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.